excited about is this is the first time the consumer industry has come together. We've never before brought everyone together. So when we decided to create the summit, we were focused on the theme of transformation.
Yes.
Because there isn't a part of the industry that hasn't gone through transformation. Whether it's the customer, whether the influencers, whether it's technology, the entire stack, products, investors, everything has gone through a transformation because over the last 2 years, everything's digitally native. And it was not that way 2 years ago. So that just creates this ripple effect of what it means to be a successful business and how we build relationships.
I think another way I've seen businesses transform through the last few years is that they know their business is better than ever. They've really decided what their most important work or their most important products are, and they've shed all of those things that really didn't matter anymore, and they've really become laser focused on those things, whatever is serving the customer best, whatever is serving their business best. So I've never seen brands that are so in touch with really who they are, and I really admire that because it requires a great deal of discipline to be able to do that, and that's really admirable, and the transformation that I've seen overall in the last couple of years.
I think that's a great point. Customer transformation is my favorite one, right? But the more you know your customer, the more you build better businesses, and it actually makes you more resilient long term because you understand what they need. The other cool part is we live in a world where we get to know about the customer. We have data, we have analytics, we have insights, we have new pathways for acquisition that we really haven't had historically. And that's where you see, consumer and even omni-channel going. You see this expansion into all those channels. Right now, we're not just one destination. You find us everywhere. You find us, at retail stores or wholesale or on your mobile device or, in person. And that's a really cool thing. The omni-channel has actually really come true, but we still know who our customers are. We're both in consumer, right? And we're thinking about consumer and consumer-enabled technology. And it happens to be one of those industries here in Utah that people don't talk a lot about.
I know. I've thought the same thing. We're in the heart of Silicon Slopes. And I feel like we talk a lot about technology, but not as much about consumer products and the consumer industry. And you need both, don't get me wrong.
That's right.
And that's where I think it's definitely a great time to shine a light on it and talk about it for sure. It's a great time.
Exactly. And technology really fuels every industry.
It does.
So we've got this interesting intersection. I think one of the other things that, as my career's intersected on both of those, right? And so has yours, is that when you look at what's happening in the state of Utah, 1 in 10 jobs is tied to the consumer industry.
Yes.
And it represents just under 10% of the overall state's GDP.
Which is, that's a juggernaut if you think about it.
Exactly.
It really is an industry that we need to be shining a light on.
That's right. It's a critical component, and there is a great time for us to really talk about what the impact is for our community. When you think about the economy, right, and you think about all these different sectors, consumer is a really important part of what that looks like. We've talked a little bit about the fact that you've got 1 in 10 jobs that are anchored in consumer. It's almost 10% of Utah's GDP. But what that means is you have lots of people inventing and thinking about businesses and growing them. And we actually don't talk about that. And so that's what my favorite part about this is you start talking to all these companies that are like, oh yes, please, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the amazing things that are happening in each of these sectors. The other thing I find, I don't know if you find this true too, is that as you go into the university settings, all of these young entrepreneurs are thinking about businesses oftentimes in this industry.
Yes, absolutely. Well, when I think about the businesses that were born and raised here in Utah, you think of Taft, you think of Albion, you think of Traeger. These brands, they born and raised right here, and they are national brands. And what an impact they've had not only on Utah, but on our economy, on the whole United States. And that is something that I think about those numbers when I think about the GDP and the influence that Utah has had overall nationally. It's a big deal. How much were we saying? 10% is consumer goods. That's an impressive number. And I really think of being in, like we were saying, heart of Silicon Slopes. Yet we have all of these consumer product companies that were started here. And what a cool thing. You need both.
That's right.
Because we need both, why not talk about that? love that.
That's right. And I think it has also led to lots of technology companies that are serving the consumer industry.
Yes.
Because you've got the e-commerce companies, you have companies doing supply chain, you have companies doing shipping, you have companies doing all the back-end systems. They're anchoring here also. So the entire ecosystem just works so nicely together. And that's what makes us such a powerful region. So in the Consumer Summit, as we think about this idea of what does transformation really mean, and even what has really accelerated in the last couple of years, it led us into these great stories we started finding out about companies in the consumer space. So we're talking about all sorts of transformation, but some of the examples that come to mind is you think about, and you're tied into this too, transformations that have happened in the investment ecosystem.
Yes.
Right, so now for the first time, we're talking about funds and dollars going to consumer companies from funds in the state. That has actually never happened before. We very rarely fund consumer companies here. So that's really interesting to see that transformation that's happening from funds, from SPACs that are coming in, and from IPOs this year that happened in the consumer space. I think that's one of the interesting transformations.
Absolutely. I also think, kind of on a different note, the transformation of just continuing to run a business in this place where supply chain has been completely challenging for everyone. I think 2020 was challenging because of COVID and because that was a little bit unpredictable, but in some way we were able to start predicting that. 2021 comes and we had no idea that we were going to have so many different headwinds. I think it was every month that we were talking about something different. And so I look at the ability for all of these businesses to continue to just stay in business and to create jobs here in Utah. And I would say that's a transformation that really is stunning in my mind.
Well, and I've seen that transformation directly apply in manufacturing, where we're actually seeing manufacturing come back into the U.S. because of what's happened in the last couple of years.
Thank you.
Right? So, whether it's, and it's really in all different sectors that it's coming back. I mean, I think a couple of months ago, you and I were talking about the straw problem, right? Like I needed a specific straw, right? And you have straws.
And I was saying, even we are having a hard time getting straws.
Right. And so I think there's been these interesting insights that have happened in that where it's actually going to create an entire new sector of jobs coming back here because of that. Another kind of couple of examples that come to mind are some of the transformations that have categorically happened in different ways. Like I think Traeger has done this massive market transformation, taking an established company, transforming that into a totally different type of brand that's very relevant today.
Yes.
That's a cool transformation. I was talking to my friend Jason who runs Crumble, and Crumble Cookies has completely transformed like franchises and cookies.
Yeah.
Right, and what that has meant on a national scale. That's anchored here.
Yes.
And so you have these companies that are creating transformation with that innovation and really redefining categories or back-end integrations, supply chain, customers, and even the investment ecosystem. I think that's what's so cool about the market, but it's also what creates opportunity.
Yeah, it is. And Jason and Crumble, it's a perfect example of tech and consumer products.
That's right.
Marrying and being able to bring those things to the customer, which is what really matters.
Exactly.
The Utah restaurants, and I would say overall during COVID, the reason they weathered all of that so well is because of how agile they were. I think it's part of the restaurant industry to be agile, to pivot quickly. And I remember sitting there getting the news on the daily. What we wondered, what would we be hearing that day? And when I think about what we did from there, it was literally daily pivoting. And it wasn't just us, but it was also other brands, other companies, standing up virtual drive-thrus and implementing technology that really enabled us to be able to continue serving customers. And when I think about every company that really weathered the COVID storm well, that's what they did. They were just agile, they were resilient. They just kept going and kept showing up and really put on that entrepreneur hat again.
Yep.
Because I think you put it on in the beginning and then you just get going.
That's right.
But you had to put it on again and again during that time.
And I think businesses today have now just taken that approach for everything. Like we'll take whatever data comes in, we'll make the changes, and we'll keep moving forward. I also think that's what's created more and more opportunity for companies and for entrepreneurs and for growth. And you guys are launching lots of new chains all of the time, I feel like.
No.
But everything in the ecosystem is growing because I think of the ability that we've had to pivot. And that's why I think we need more conversations around what is happening so that it enables other people to become part of the industry and also relish in the success that we see or the challenges people are faced from or learn from each other.
Yes.
And I think that's the opportunity we have with things like the summit. Bring all these great minds together who don't normally come together and talk about what we're doing to move forward.
Oh, I would agree. Absolutely. Well, Utah is definitely so resilient. It's led the pack, really, if you think about it in the last few years, despite the headwinds of COVID, of course, but then also the current headwinds of inflation, of supply chain issues, of a possible recession. I mean, really, I think Utah has always led the pack, and I know I'm really proud to be associated with the businesses in this state that have continued to, I think, remain agile and do whatever it took to just continue to face the headwinds of COVID. What are your thoughts?
That's right. I think we have this unique entrepreneurial ecosystem that gives us that mindset.
Yeah, it's in our DNA, right?
It's in our DNA, and I think that led to the state building a stack of businesses that are very diverse. Utah is unique across the entire country where we actually represent the same diversity of the entire country of types of business segments. Most states actually end up with a major concentration in one, which makes them more prone to recessions. They have a harder time coming out of them, and they have a harder time managing them. So when you live in a state like this, where consumer is a very critical component, but it also adds to the diversity, so that as we hit challenging times, there is a smoothness that happens to a state like ours, which makes it a great place to start businesses and a great place for entrepreneurship, as we all know.
Our business started during a recession, so
Oh,
I
did
think
it?
about what might happen. I mean, it's still just talk. It doesn't even worry me. And I know so many Utah businesses that feel the same way. Nothing like that even worries them. If COVID were to happen again, it's not even a concern. They know exactly what to do.
That's right. And I watched lots of businesses pivot too, right? Ones who were completely disrupted by the pandemic, but have done an amazing job recovering. And so when you live in an ecosystem that has that mindset, we have great opportunity. And that's the reason we have to talk about it and showcase the great things happening here. When I texted Andrew about participating, right, he sent me like my favorite line ever, which I probably can't say, but he was just like, it's about time, right, that we talk about this because we always talk about tech. And I think that's how we all feel. Like there's this opportunity to shine this amazing light. And so the approach to this is, how do we highlight all of these great things happening and talk about things that are deeply meaningful to consumer? Across product, across influencer, across customer, across investment, and let these industry leaders show what they're doing and lead this conversation as this first moment. So for us, this is the opportunity to bring everyone together, to create a sense of community, to learn from each other, and just really establish this platform that we grow from here forward.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. And as you were talking, that was the word that I was thinking was community. It takes someone to bring all of us together so that we can, I'm just getting cold chills just thinking about it, but so that we can all just befriend. I love the word befriending. We can befriend each other, we can get to know each other, but also the one thing I love about Utah that's so good is that everyone's really supportive. And friendshipping is real here. And once you know each other, you help each other and there's a bond created. And I love that someone is doing that for the consumer goods industry.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so much about what we can learn from each other. We run into similar issues. And I agree. It's not about being competitive. It's about building community because we all benefit when we do that.
Absolutely.